Hello and welcome everyone to The Slice, the only show that makes sports as fun as a constitutional law class, honestly. But today, we'll be talking about the historic usage of free labor in a billion-dollar industry that has the capability of depriving the workforce of their individual identity and beliefs. And before you say, Akhil, you can't compare college athletics to slavery. Of course I can. You know why? Because the first executive director of the NCAA beat me to the punch.
The management of intercollegiate athletics stays in place, committed to an outmoded code of amateurism. And I attribute that to, quite frankly, to the neo-plantation mentality that exists on the campuses of our country and in the conference offices.
That's right, you heard him. Neo-plantation mentality. So spare me your defense of the amateur status of college athletes. However, I'm not an idiot. It's not feasible to pay every college athlete. Schools, by and large, just can't afford that. According to a report from the NCAA in 2014, only 20 football bowl subdivision schools had revenues that exceeded expenses. The Football Bowl Subdivision, or FBS, is the highest category of Division I schools that play football. It includes the Power 5 conferences and the Group of 5 conferences, along with various independent schools. So this group doesn't include schools in the Football Championship Subdivision or in Divisions 2 and 3. Now, there's an argument to be made that at the rate at which FBS schools spend money on things like facilities and coaching staffs is higher in order to present the image that schools can't afford to pay players, but that's not a recent trend or a current problem or anything.
Here's what the new locker rooms look like. LSU released this video showing the locker rooms, which obviously they want to use as a recruiting tool. They include nap pods.
Not at all. But there are other issues with the ability to pay athletes. For example, some argue that paying athletes that play revenue-drawing sports is only fair. They would be wrong because of a statute called Title IX, which prevents treating men's and women's sports differently. As much as people will argue that men's sports are just more interesting, the fact remains that paying male athletes but not female athletes because one draws more revenue is inviting a whole bevy of lawsuits. And as we just covered, these schools just don't have the money. But what is insane is the inability of these athletes to profit off of their own names and likenesses. The reason for this is the NCAA's commitment to the idea of a student athlete and amateurism. Funnily enough, Walter Byers, the guy who came up with the term student athlete, later said this about it.
And I attribute that to, quite frankly, to the neo-plantation mentality that exists on the campuses of our country and in the conference offices.
Did we just play the same clip again? Yes. Yes, we did. Because I cannot impress upon you enough that the first executive director of this quote-unquote nonprofit and the person who came up with the term student athlete ended up hating the entire idea. The term student athlete was originally implemented to help protect the NCAA from workmen's compensation claims in the 1950s. But in the 21st century, that's not the issue anymore. Granted, schools still don't have to provide workmen's comp, but the NCAA now has billion-dollar television deals in place for football and basketball. There are entire television networks dedicated to the concept of collegiate athletics. Yet, here we are, with current NCAA President Mark Emmert saying dumb stuff like this.
We provide students with access to education, and we provide them with the cost of tuition fees, room, board, books, and supplies, and there's not even a salary to debate. They're not employees, they're students. If you're going to hire someone to play football for you, why would you want them to be a student? That doesn't make any sense to me. If their mission, if they're hired to be an employee of a university, to play football for entertainment, then having to be a student is a distraction that really would sort of get in the way of their being perhaps successful as a football player. So if your sole belief is student basketball player, men's basketball players need to be paid, and until they're paid, this doesn't work, well then...
And that never came up with the Rice Commission. It was never even addressed. Or it was addressed, but they said they never
Of course, they said, no, that's not what collegiate basketball is about.
Just stop. This concept means that players can't receive any financial compensation. From boosters, from coaches, from teachers, but most importantly, they can't get paid for endorsement deals or the use of their own names and likeness. Keep in mind, The NCAA for years made money off of licensing their brands to EA Sports for their college sports games. This only stopped in part due to a lawsuit brought by former UCLA star Ed O'Bannon, which ended with a ruling in favor of O'Bannon. EA also reached a settlement for $40 million for the usage of likenesses, names, and images of collegiate athletes. And if you're concerned at all about how schools survived losing this revenue stream, because as we said earlier, they just don't make money. First off, hi Mark Emmert, thanks for tuning in. And schools still make plenty of money off of their athletes. For example, selling jerseys with the numbers of their star athletes, even if the name is removed. But the players themselves, they're not allowed to get paid at all. And the NCAA is not afraid of going after their biggest stars, as historically, players like Johnny Manziel, because sorry, I can't believe I used the word star and Johnny Manziel in the same sentence in 2019. But yes, stars like Manziel, Todd Gurley, and Jameis Winston have been just a few names caught up in scandals involving signing autographs for compensation. Could you imagine this standard being on the academic side of universities? Like, oh yeah, hey, I know you just developed the next great meal delivery service that transports food via the television like Willy Wonka, but because you're on scholarship here because of that big old brain of yours, you can't make any money off that. You think I'm joking? Allow me to introduce you to the case of Donald De La Haye. De La Haye was a kicker for the University of Central Florida. UCF. And hold on one second. I have to do this. UCF, meet me over there. Hey, UCF. Look, you didn't win the national title. It's okay. But stop giving yourself fake titles like this is pro wrestling. And start playing road games against better teams. I don't remember Boise State acting like this. You'll never be Boise State, UCF. Never. You're not my real mid-major. You'll never be them. How dare you stand where they stood? Anyways, in 2017, De La Haye had a popular YouTube channel with over 90,000 subscribers and 5 million total views, with videos like this.
So all we know is hustling. I'm trying to come up with my fam.
Woo-hoo! Athlete! How'd that feel?
Impressive. And you would think that he would be applauded for his initiative and just doing what any person with a platform should do and trying to build his brand. And look, at this point, if you haven't figured out where this is going, I'll let Donald take it away.
Just having fun, a young man having fun in his free time, making little videos to help motivate and inspire others. And I get deemed ineligible to continue playing college sports because of it. Oh man. Institution had to submit a waiver on your behalf asking for release of the legislation. NCAA approved the waiver in which you can use his name, picture, and likeness to continue your self-employment business. However, it is with conditions, boldly underlined. It says, videos can't reference your status as a student athlete, nothing UCF related, gear, facilities, other student athletes, etc. Videos can't depict your football or athletic skills or abilities, including anything specific to the sport of football, pass a football, kick a football, talk about quarterbacks, etc., etc. Videos that don't satisfy these conditions will have to be removed from the monetized account, and the funds generated from these videos will have to be donated to a charity of your choice.
He was declared ineligible by the NCAA because he had videos that showed off his athletic skills. The NCAA granted an exception if he moved his athletic videos to a demonetized channel, but De La Haye, rightly recognizing that his popularity is because he is a kicker, politely told the NCAA to stick their ruling where the sun don't shine. Now, it will make you happy to know that De La Haye opted to keep making videos, is now in the middle of a stint with the Canadian Football League, and his popularity has only grown. But it's ridiculous that he had to leave his team in the first place. There is movement in the right direction, however.
California student athletes are one step closer to being allowed to earn compensation and sponsorships while in college. The California Assembly Higher Education Committee unanimously passed Senate Bill 206, the Fair Pay to Play Act. If made into law, it'll allow student athletes at California universities to earn compensation for the use of their name, image, and likeness starting in January 2023, unless the NCAA moves to block it.
That's right. In California, a bill called the Fair Pay to Play Act, or SB 206, was introduced to move student athletes to the Olympic model. In this version of amateur status, athletes could profit from endorsements and their names, images, and likenesses. The bill passed the Senate by a 31-5 vote, but it can't be passed until the California legislature returns from recess in mid-August. But that hasn't stopped the response coming swiftly from the NCAA and colleges. In particular, Stanford Athletic Director Bernard Meir wrote a letter to the California State Senate in which he stated that allowing athletes to receive compensation from endorsements and their likenesses would present serious challenges for higher education institutions and to the collegiate sports model. He also stated his belief that any change needed to be implemented at the national level and by the NCAA. Hold on, I think I have something for this.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
This is serious.
I know. This really is the world's smallest violin. See?
I don't care what anyone says. SpongeBob is an American masterpiece. But getting back to the lunacy, Mark Emmert went a step further, raising the possibility that California schools would be banned from participating in national championships because they'd have too much of an advantage because they had players getting paid. And think about that. That's the logic that 16-year-olds use to determine who they'll invite to their birthday parties. Well, Jimmy didn't follow my rules, so he's not allowed to come anymore. It's my Super Sweet 16, and I want it exactly how I want. Now get me my cake in the shape of a supercar before I scream! Interestingly enough, the NCAA also recently formed a committee to explore the possibility of expanding the rules around athlete compensation, but of course, they were adamant that there would be no solution that resulted in schools directly paying athletes. And that's fine. It's totally fine. Maybe that's too big of a step. But the sheer implementation of some idea of letting athletes profit off of themselves seems like common sense. And not just common sense, it's downright patriotic. This country prides itself on encouraging our young people to work hard on themselves and to make something of ourselves. We were told that the best kind of money was money that we earned. At least that's what my dad told me when he made me go out and mow the lawn to get $5 to buy more Yu-Gi-Oh cards. But for these athletes, the injury risk that they take and the money that ends up being thrown around in college sports, is it too much to ask that these athletes get the right to pursue endorsement deals? At least for basketball players, the option exists to go overseas and play professionally in other countries. But that option doesn't even exist for all players, just the upper echelon. And don't even get me started on the market for women's sports. For football players, there's no other real option. If you want to play in the NFL, you have to deal with this. And that's just stupid. But hey, that's just a slice of college sports. I'm Akhil Ganesh, and I'll see you next time.